Hello! Welcome to PUTINWORKTV. We've enjoyed watching your journey and growth as an artist in the New England music scene and really want to hear more about your story. Our focus is allowing our guests to tell their stories front and center without judgment or opinion. Let's dive in. How did it all begin, Nate?
I think it depends because there's a bunch of different beginnings to this story because it's not just one narrator. The way I like to look at my journey is that there's a bunch of different people telling the story, but the story all ends up the same way at any given time. What I mean by that is that if you ask one person about where it started for me, they might talk about when I was a child. You feel me? They might talk about how I started off making poems and stuff like that and submitting them into competitions when I was a kid, an actual child, under the age of 10. And then you can another person might talk about me in middle school, you know what I mean? Having a strong stage presence, you feel me? And just always trying to tell jokes and be in that environment where I wanted to be front and center and was navigating through that. Another person might talk about high school, you know what I mean, where I started rapping for the first time. But I think overall, the way that I would tell it, I guess, is just that in Roxbury, there's always a heavy arts presence. And when I was younger, I would always be around a bunch of different styles of art, always being exposed to murals and, paintings on the visual side. And then on the music side, knowing that, on my father's side, there's a, heavy, soca background, you feel me? Always being around that type of music growing up even was something that inspired me to just, the rhythm. It's just in me because that's, how my people operated. So, yeah, music and art in general had always played, a big role in my life. So I'll just say it started from conception to now.
So, would you say that, ending up as an artist was an inevitable path for you in your life?
No, because I don't think that I wanted to be an artist or even consider myself an artist. Artistry is a very interesting thing because I think a lot of times people have creative talent, but they're not willing to explore it. And I was one of those people where it was it's something that I always have on me. You feel me? If I need to bust it out, I can, but it's never something that I'm trying to pursue. I think even as of now, I'm more so interested in building a movement through art than I am pursuing this idea of being an artist. I feel an artist is someone that pushes themselves creatively and they push themselves as a creator in order to propel themselves to the next level and propel themselves forward. There's always this idea of forward momentum. You feel me? Where am I going next? What's the next thing that I'm working on? And for me, it's a lot less, okay, what's next? And more so what is the impact looking like? You know what I mean? With what I've already done. How many people have heard this thing? How many people have seen me perform? Or how many people know of what I'm trying to relay to them now? How well was that message received? And how far can this message go based on what I'm seeing right now? You know what I mean? And I feel maybe that's the difference between me and a lot of other artists. Because I'm less focused on the art and more focused on the people. You know what I mean? So I think, no, it might not have been an inevitability. But I think as far as it being a medium for me to impact people, it might have been because that's something that has always impacted me. You know what I mean? When I think about being in middle school and listening to a variety of different genres of music, trying to figure out, or find myself as a person, you know what I mean? Be who is expressing what I'm feeling the most, thoroughly, in a way that resonates with me the most. And a lot of times that was in music that is outside of the genre that I create now. So I feel maybe it wasn't an inevitability on that end, but yeah, at least as of right now, and again, depending on who's telling the story, you might get a different response. But for me, I think no, it wasn't.
So when you talk about the impact and the movement you want to create, what does that look like for you in fruition, when it's done? Where are you in that process right now?
I want to see a world that's free of vitriol. I think a lot of times people have anger towards specific groups of people and towards their enemies, people that they perceive as their enemies. That's not always warranted. And I feel a lot of times that anger stems from fear. You feel me? So really what I'm saying is I want to live in a world without fear, where people feel they are accepted and they can move in a way that, you know what I mean, they're not to be judged by another person and they're not to be persecuted for anything that they're doing that's a lifestyle choice, you feel me, or is related to anything identity wise. Just because at least the world that we live in now, it's rare that you can be yourself in a way that is honoring who you truly are without being judged or persecuted somewhere along the way. And I talked about that on my album Human Gal, where it was this concept of like double consciousness, you know, from the standpoint of like me as like a black person and like a black like man on that end, where it's just like, yo, I have thoughts and beliefs that I can't necessarily fully like express at any given point because of the environment that I'm placed in. And for black people, you know what I mean, double consciousness was like how we describe that phenomenon. Some people, like, it might manifest itself as like code switching. For some people, you know what I mean, you go into a different environment, you have to like change how you like are perceived so that you can like assimilate more, or so that you can fit in and like succeed in that environment. For some people, it might look like having to like hide their like identity or their sexual orientation, whatever it might be. You feel me? So like, to me, I think that's where I want to be. I want to be in a space where no one has to do those things. You know what I mean? And so where I'm at right now with it is just getting that message across. I feel like there's a lot more people now that I know of that like know of double consciousness, which is dope, because that was something that like I had rarely heard talked about in the spaces that I was a part of. And now I'm seeing like more people and even more artists talking about it, which is really cool. Just to see, not saying that they like are like inspired by like me, but I'm saying that that conversation was like initially like sparked around the same time as I released my album, and now I'm seeing more and more people talk about it and incorporate it into their art because it's real. You feel me? Like that's something that we all go through. It's not like someone just made it up. You feel me? Like it's real life, so it's dope. So I think that's where I want to see the movement go. Just people being able to like live in a world without fear, without hatred, without anger, and yeah, where we go from there, I think is going to be a lot more simple. But how we get there is going to take a lot more than just me dropping an album or anything like that.
What do you think inspired you or informed you to act the way you do when it comes to art? You know what I'm saying? In terms of like, you said you wanted to, you focus on the impact when it comes to art, and the impact is to make a world without fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so what informs you to like move in that way?
I think because like I live in fear, you feel me? Or like a constant state of like fear at different points. It's like there's never a point where I feel like my guard is like completely down because I'm not in any type of environment where that's like possible, you feel me? Because no matter what, like anything can happen at any given point. And I think that sense and that like constant state of like fear that I live in like impacts my art, because at the end of the day, it's like I'm not gonna like I don't know. There's a lot of niggas out there, they'll be lying in everything that they talk about. You feel me? They'll make songs and everything about shit that they never experienced, shit that they never did because it sounds cool to them. You feel me? I'm not one of those niggas. So like everything that I talk about in my music and everything that I relay, whether it's like in any medium, you feel me? Whether it's like prose or I'm like writing a poem, like it doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna make sure that I'm telling the truth at all times when it comes to my music and when it comes to my art, when it comes to any message that I'm relaying. In real life, I'll lie to niggas' faces. I don't give a fuck. But and when I'm writing it down or when I'm creating like a specific thing, I'm never gonna lie. And so for me, I have to make sure I'm honoring how I truly feel and exploring how I truly feel, because I don't feel like in my reality or outside of the art or outside of anything that's out, like, you know, just I guess conversation driven, I can tell the truth. You feel me? I don't feel like I can like honor those things outside of that. So to me, I think that's what drives it the most, or like drives me to create in the way that I do and drives my content to be as like, people say that self-aware. I don't really say that self-aware because I feel like it's more so just like honest, where it's like I can't be honest all the time in reality in real life, but through the art and through anything else that I'm like putting on paper or in the booth, whatever, on a track, I can be. You feel me? So I think that's what drives it the most.
So how would you say growing up in Roxbury informed that honesty? You know what I'm saying? You talked about how Roxbury is a place full of art, full of music, you know what I'm saying? Also like part of your family as well. Just like the rhythms of being in your blood. And how did that bring you to always wanting to be honest, or like having honesty as a big value?
So I remember when I was younger, my sister would always tell me, or like she would try to get me to go to stuff at Helios when we were younger, because like, you know, there would be random times where like artists that we know of as like legends now, you feel me, like Lauryn Hill would like stop by and just like do like quick performances, but also just engage in the community. You're not from Boston, you feel me? Like you're not from here, but this community has embraced you because you make sure to tell your truth at any given time. And like you can exist in a space where you feel safe and you feel comfortable, like no matter where you go, because you've been honest with the community that you work to build. You feel me? And like I think of that as like the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is one of the best albums of all time, and I think it's like one of the top 3 like hip hop albums like ever. And the reason why is because on that she's like relaying in detail like her like heartbreak, her tragedy her joy, you know what I mean, like how she feels about everything that's going on in her life. And she was writing those things and like putting those songs together as it was happening to her. You feel me? She was pregnant, recording a lot of those things. She had like her son at a like while she was in a relationship with, or she was supposed to be in a relationship with someone else. She's cheating on her husband, or she's cheating on her man and getting pregnant by the person that she cheated with. Now she got to kill it. It's like, it's a fudge. You feel me? It's like, yo, and she's like not being like, she's not sugarcoating anything. She's like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm a flawed individual, and I have like people that depend on me and people that rely on me and these experiences that I want to relay, and I want to make sure that I'm setting that example for the next person. Just be honest about your shit. You feel me? Because we're all imperfect beings, and that to me is inspiring, or inspired me, because like Haley House is in Roxbury. You feel me? So it's like these are people that I'm hearing on the radio, and they're in my community. You know what I mean? And they've like made it a point to be here, not like to just fuck around and like come here and then leave. But it's like, nah, I'll come here every time I'm on tour, and I'm gonna just sit here, drink some tea with y'all. You feel me? Y'all my people, because I've built this community with y'all. And I think that to me is just like, I know that that's not possible without honesty. I know that that's not something that you can actually like, you know, strive for if you're not willing to like put your pride aside and tell your story and tell your whole story and be truthful about it. So I think seeing stuff like that, and just like also knowing that like the artists that I look up to the most, like they're all willing to like tell those stories and like just be transparent about everything that's going on with them, no matter how corny it sounds or whatever like people might perceive it as. I think that's dope. So to me, it's like, yo, I want to make sure that I'm staying honest. But as far as growing up in Roxbury goes, I think those experiences that I like kind of missed out on because I wasn't listening to my sister and I wasn't going to those things, or like at Haley House, it was like, damn, I'm fucking up. But I know that it exists, and to me, that's just like, that's enough to propel me forward.
What would you say are other key takeaways or things that you got from growing up in Roxbury, in the Boston area?
Just that, like, life is not sweet, you feel me? Like, I grew up with a lot of people who are no longer with us. And I say I'm from Roxbury because I grew up in Roxbury in two different, like, neighborhoods and streets. But I also grew up in Dorchester and Grove Hall. So, like, I'm kind of, like, in between both of those. I just be in Roxbury way more. So that's, like, where I, like, call home. But Grove Hall and, like, that area, Dorchester as well, like, Four Corners is like, that's, like, where I'm from also. But, you know, growing up in that area, you know, you lose a lot of people that you're close with, like, play with at the park. And there's never an expectation that you, like, carry on, like, their legacy. And I think part of that is because they don't really have, like, a legacy. You feel me? A lot of times these are, like, young people, like, children, really, like, you know what I mean, who aren't even able to, like, have left a lasting impact on, like, the world, on the world around them. And I remember seeing things where it was like, okay, I was with this kid, and now he's, like, in a casket. And to me, it's just, like, that's like personal. Anytime anything happens to any black person, like, I take it personally. You feel me? Any tragedy happens to any black person, I take it personally. And I witnessed those tragedies happening over and over again. You feel me? I've seen, like, people who have been shot, like, at my doorstep. You feel me? And, like, are gasping their last, like, breaths. And, you know what I mean? I'm a child. You feel me? What can I do to help them? But I feel like if there's anything that has taught me growing up in, like, Roxbury and in Grove Hall, it's been that stuff is not sweet. Life is not sweet. You know what I mean? And what that means is just that, like, at any given point, everything that you gain can get taken away from you. You feel me? Like, it doesn't matter, like, how much work you put in. Like, the blink of an eye, like, anything tragic can happen. Tragedy can strike. And maybe that's a universal lesson, but I know that that's something that I gained from growing up in my community. And another thing also is that when it comes down to, and this also relates to the art, is that on that point of honoring legacies, because it's not an expectation that, like, you do so, I make it a point to do so. You feel me? Every person that I ever grew up with is, like, with me in the music that I create. Every experience that I, like, had that I can remember, I make sure that that's, like, something that's can be relayed in some way, shape, or form through the art that I create. Whether it's, like, little sounds that I'll, like, pick up from just, like, roaming the streets, or things that I'll make sure that I see. You know what I mean? When I was growing up, my mom, when she was taking me home from school, she would always drive past, like, the NCAA museum where, like, the statue, like, the black head is. And, like, I don't know why she was doing it. I know why she was doing it, but I'm like, that's kind of OD because, like, high key, like, there's way faster routes that she could take. But she would take that route because she wanted me to see that, because it, like, brought me joy in those moments. And it was always, like, a constant reminder to me that, like, I'm black and that that's something to be proud of, not something to be ashamed of, no matter what other people in the environments that I was in at the time would try to make me feel. So because of that, it's like, that's something that's in Roxbury also. I will see those things and be like, I have to, like, honor the legacy of the people around me. I have to honor the legacy of, like, what it means and honor being black and everything that I create. it's like what Kendrick said on Damn. It was kind of wild, but he was saying, like, you know what I mean, last LP I tried to uplift the black artists, but there's a difference between black artists and whack artists. And I was like, when I heard that, a lot of people said that was corny, no cap. And I was like, that's wild, because y'all niggas is the niggas that he's talking about, probably. Y'all niggas is chips. You know what I mean? There's a work that needs to be put in order to uplift the black community, but at the same time, the black community has to be willing to, like, uplift ourselves. And I feel like I want to be, like, one of those people that's doing that, at the very least.
So what would you say is one of your main motivations when it comes to creating art beyond what you've already said?
I think what propels me moving forward for art or with creating art is that there's always going to be something to say. And I think it helps knowing that there's people listening, but I know that there's always going to be more to say. Like, every day that I live is a new experience that I can relay through my art. And as long as I'm still here, then it's like there's still a story to tell. And I think, like, I talked about that a little bit on Human Guile, but I feel like moving forward, like, I want to emphasize that a lot more, because regardless of, like, whatever, like, mental state I'm in and how much motivation I feel in everyday life, there's always a drive to create, because there's always, like, everything is a story, you feel me, and everything is something to tell. And I mentioned earlier, like, those different perspectives on my own life and my own journey. I wish to, like, examine those things as well, you feel me, like, checking in with the people who have been with me on this journey for however long and whatever given stage they jumped in, because their perspective is just as valuable as mine, and those are also perspectives that I hope to be able to relate through my art moving forward. You know what I mean? It's not easy, and it's not something that comes, like, overnight. So a lot of times I've found myself, like, writing lyrics and then just, like, sitting with them and then just, like, going back and kind of, like, basically, like, rewriting the entire thing with the same flows and the same switches, whatever, just with different lyrics. Because I want to tell the same story from a different perspective and see how that sounds, and see, like, if that's something that's more appealing to me, or, like, maybe it's something that I haven't even, like, have an opportunity to grasp until I had those conversations with the people who were there with me. So as long as there's a story to tell, my motivation to create will be there.
Speaking of, like, your process of creating, what is it? You just said, like, you know, you'll write something and rewrite it, but give me more of a full picture about how you go about creating the art that you make.
There's a couple different ways that I go about creating, but I'll talk about, like, writing lyrics. A lot of rappers, they write to, like, beats and stuff like that, or, like, they'll, like, freestyle and kind of just, like, find flows and stuff like that. For me, I, like, write poems, so I'll, like, write all my lyrics before I hear the beat for the most part, because I feel like, to me, it, like, gives me an opportunity to, like, flex my creativity. Like, I don't hear anything when I'm putting these things together. I have to, like, feel it, you know what I mean? And I think there's value to being, like, or, like, having a background in poetry, because you can write. I feel like it's easier for you to write lyrics because you don't have, like, when you have beats in front of you, because then it's just like, oh, now I'm just rapping, you feel me? This is way easier than, like, telling, like, a fucking life story in, like, only a couple stanzas, you feel me? So, like, to me, it's sometimes easier to write to beats, but I push myself all the time and write without it. So I'll write, like, it's a lot. Like, I'll write, like, 160 bars sometimes. Sometimes I'll write, like, 8, whatever. But, like, I just write until I feel like I'm done writing. And I'll keep going. And for the songs, I might only pick, like, 16 of those bars out of the 160 that I wrote. And the world may never hear those other bars. But just know that, like, there was an entire, like, soliloquy that I wrote to get, like, whatever it was. Same thing for features, same thing for everything. Like, unless I'm in the studio and I'm, like, hearing the beat in front of me and I'm writing, like, all the remixes that I've done, everything, like, I wrote mad lyrics, like, so many lyrics that couldn't fit within that space. So I, like, narrowed it down, which is also why when niggas tell me, oh, your verse has to be shorter and all the like, other shit that they say, I be like, nigga, no, because you don't know how long this fucking verse was when I started. So you don't know how short it can, like, you don't know how long this could have been. Like, when I hear shit like that, I'm always like, y'all niggas really don't be like, y'all niggas don't be in the lab for real, bro. No cap. Because niggas don't, like, take time to, like, write through, like, their entire fucking, like, life story through, like, bar form to, like, narrow it down. Like, to me, narrowing it down to 16 bars is, like, almost an impossible task, but I've done it countless times, you feel me? So it's like, chase a bag, don't worry about how much I'm writing. But all this to say, I appreciate, like, just pushing myself and taking time to, like, actually write through, like, you know what I mean, these long form kind of, like, verses and cutting them down. Because it gives me an opportunity also, like, to push myself in different ways every time. So I'm with that. That's my creative process for writing lyrics. If you want to know, like, the actual process behind it, there's a couple of different methods that I go with. The one that I, like, reveal the most, because it's, like, the one that I use the least, is just, like, my formulaic method, I guess. Start off with, like, a topic. Think through, like, a topic. Be like, I want to talk about oppression. Be like, what does that mean to you? You know what I mean? Then you're like, okay, you got a topic, whatever. Then you got to twirl from that topic and come up with themes. Be like, what are some different things that are related to that thing? Be like, racism, sexism, you know what I mean? All the isms. Be like, all right, bet. Now you got some themes. But can you, like, what you gonna do with them themes? You feel me? Like, are you gonna, like, take them and then, like, incorporate those words into it? Like, nah. Now you got to find words that are connected to those themes that might come up. And then after you do that, you find words that rhyme with those words. And you come up with flows, and then you just fill in the blanks. You feel me? So, like, that makes it, like, easy to, like, write. You know what I mean? Like, rap lyrics, at least. Because then it's just like, oh, boom, I can bust out, like, an easy, like, 4 bars. All I got to do is look at all these words that I just put up here. You know what I mean? And then just come up with flows. As long as I've heard a song, then I know how flows work, then I can do that. There's other methods, but I try not to, like, speak too much on them. Because I feel like they're more or less, like, they're not unique to me. But it's like, you can't give away all the sauce. You feel me? I don't know. I feel like some stuff, like, if you really want that, you got to pay me for it. No cap.
So a real Mad Lib approach.
Yeah, facts. The Mad Lib method. That's a good way to describe it, actually. I just be calling it, like, formula because it's, like, everything's, like, an equation almost. Those were fun. You need to bring those back. You should make, like, a rap version where you, like, take, like, rap lyrics and then you, like, take out certain words and then you got to fill in certain stuff. That'd be hard to do if you did it with, like, what's it called? With, like, all the coke rappers and shit like that. Niggas that be rapping about selling drugs. You're like, I just flipped and then you got it right back. You're like, I just flipped a bar of soap. Or I just flipped a chicken. You're like, it can mean, anything can mean drugs if you really, like, spin it. You feel me? I just flipped a waffle. Be like, oh, snap. Man, what's that? I don't even know about that. That'd be hard. I'm about to do that, actually. Don't take that idea. No cut.
So, what are some things you wish you knew before you started making music and started your journey?
I wish that, like, I knew how similar to, like, all the art scenes, like, rap was. Because when I was growing up, like, I was seeing a bunch of people collaborating all the time. You feel me? Like, I would always be like, why didn't this artist collab with this artist? And then, like, a couple weeks later, you come out, they have something. Be like, oh, snap, they do have a collab. That's fire. So I wish that I knew that it was very similar to every other art form where people were in competition with each other. Because from the outside looking in, rap doesn't seem like a competition. You feel me? It seems like it's just people making music. It's not about who's the best. It's about, like, who's making the music that people listen to the most and, like, who's enjoying their music the most. You know what I mean? Because, like, I was listening to artists where it's like, I know people would say, like, oh, you're listening to Kyle, bro? Why you listening to Kyle? Kyle's Chips. Be like, cuz, bro, his music be making me feel good, bro. I don't know. It's just nice. It's nice sounds. I feel like when I started rapping, it was like, oh, snap. Niggas are, like, intimidated by, like, talent, and they don't really, like, understand that, like, even if it's not your intention to, like, shut someone down, you can easily shut someone down just by being better than them. And that's not on you, per se. It's more so on, like, the nature of the game. You feel me? Like, that people can feel, like, so frustrated when they're not on, like, a similar level as someone else, or if they don't view themselves on a similar level, without recognizing that we're in the same space at the same time, so we're on the same level regardless. You feel me? Like, to me, I wish I had known that because it would have saved me a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort in trying to convince people that we're on the same level so that I wouldn't have to spend a lot of time. It's almost like I'm dumbing myself down to bring myself to the level where they perceive that they are. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though we might be at the same place at the same time, like, people just won't understand. So I feel like I would have saved myself a lot of time had I understood that, like, people see this as a competition, or that this, just like every other art form, is, like, filled with, like, ego and filled with, like, you know what I mean, competitive drive. If people don't see themselves on the same level as someone else, then they might not work as hard because they get defeated, or it might make them work 10 times harder because they're trying to be better. But I see the first one a lot, way more than I see the second one. And I think as artists, we have to do a better job in general, just of, like, pushing ourselves to be great. I talked about this, like, earlier this week with some people, but, like, the Harlem Renaissance was a beautiful point in time because all of those artists, they lived in such close proximity to each other in the same city, in the same environments, in the same brownstones. Like, them niggas was not looking at each other like they were enemies, you feel me? They were seeing each other and being like, I want to be better than that nigga, but I also know that that's, like, my neighbor, you feel me? So I'm not going to put him down in order to bring myself up, and I'm not going to put myself down in order to make them feel like they're up. I just want to be on the same level, you feel me? Like, they were never, like, looking at each other as, like, enemies. They was always looking at each other as, like, friendly competition or pure competition, I like to call it, you feel me? It's like, they seen each other and they was just like, okay, he's really good with, like, metaphors, you feel me? He could paint a picture like no one else, you know what I mean? His imagery is ridiculous. My imagery is gonna be even more ridiculous though. Watch, when I drop my next poem, it's about to be a foot. That nigga not, you know what I mean? He not seeing me, you feel me? It was hard, so that's how I would much prefer the game to be, you feel me? You can big up someone while also learning from them, and also, like, don't let pride get in the way, or I should say, like, by not letting pride get in the way of your greatness at the same time, you feel me? Because, like, I think in rap right now, a lot of niggas think they're better than they are, and a lot of niggas don't want to, like, learn from each other. So I would want those two things to go away. But yep, I wish I had known it was a competition, or that it was like people seen it as a competition for sure.
How do you feel about the New England creative scene and where it's at right now? Boston and the surrounding areas.
I think we're in a good spot, kind of. And I think like that kind of, for me, like that hesitation doesn't come from anyone's like skill level. I think it comes from like the authenticity of what we're creating. People are telling their true and authentic stories, but I think they're doing it in a way that like has been done before. But we definitely need more creativity in the creative scene in Massachusetts, because I think people be putting in the work, but there's too much of the same stuff. We see too much of the same, like almost like copy and pasted ideas like everywhere. And like I get it, it's like you have an idea, it might be busting, and you might want to like see more of it, but it's like at least put your own spin on it. You feel me? I feel like I've seen Mad at the Hanging Mike videos. I feel like those be pretty straightforward. It's like that's not a style that was like originated here, so seeing it is kind of like jarring whenever like you see it like over and over again. You know what I mean? I think it's the same thing with like the different types of video styles and even like the sounds of music. It's like a lot of times once something reaches here, it's like stays here, and like people just like flock to it. Like I remember going to shows where I hear like 1,000 like New York drill beats in a row. You feel me? Like, what's up with that, bro? Like, you know what I mean? It's like once the sound gets here, it doesn't find its way out. Like people don't put their own spin on stuff. You feel me? It's just like a lack of creativity in that. And what you really need to do is like find a way to, once people like get a hold of like a sound or a concept, like we're able to keep putting our own spin on it to make it unique, make it ours.